Remember, there's a difference between why do you want to be a physician versus what do you want to do as a physician. Welcome to Ask Dr. Gray Premed Q&A. How are you? Happy New Year.
I'm very good. How are you, Dr. Gray?
I'm doing great. What can I help you with?
All right. So my question mostly have to do with how I'm telling my story and basically my motivations behind being a physician and how the readers seeing my application would see it basically. So I'm just gonna give you a bit of my background
Okay.
before asking the question.
Yep.
So basically, I came to the United States when I was 13 years old, and my first experience with medicine was when I had a surgery back in high school, and so since then I was interested in the medical field. And in college, I got most of my medical experience working at a free clinic as an interpreter. And at the
Okay.
free clinic, like I'd said, about 90 to like 95% of the patient population is Hispanic, and so like a lot of my motivation to keep pursuing medicine has come from working with Hispanic patients.
Yeah.
And like I've grown like a passion like to be an advocate for them. And like I think that as a physician, I can have like a bigger impact than just being an interpreter. And so my question is, um, like, do you think it will look bad that my motivations to be a physician mostly come from only wanting to help the Hispanic community, because that's what I mostly focus on my personal statement? And so I'm kind of afraid that the people reading my application would see it as, okay, he only wants to serve the Hispanic community. He's not interested in like treating other patients. And of course, like that's not true. Like I look forward to like treating patients from all kinds of backgrounds.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if I like 90% of my personal statement is focused on helping the Hispanic community. How would the readers see the application? Like, is that a valid reason to become a physician?
Yeah. So I think it's kind of two questions rolled into one. And remember, there's a difference between why do you want to be a physician versus what do you want to do as a physician. So why do you want to be a physician is mostly focused around helping the Hispanic community from your time at the free clinic. But what you want to do as a physician, while it may include helping that same community, it's obviously as you're going through training, as you kind of set up your practice, whatever you do in the world in general, that part of the story doesn't necessarily belong in your personal statement. The personal statement is, why do you want to be a physician, not what do you hope to do as a physician? Like, what do you want to do as a physician? So I think you can separate the two and potentially water down is kind of a strong word, but water down that side of it. You're going to tell the stories that you're going to tell, right? And most of those stories are going to revolve around treating the Hispanic community, underserved population. That's great. But if you've read my book, right, I have my guide to the personal statement book here. If you've read that book, then you're whipping it out too. If you've read that book, then you'll remember, right? I talk about the seed. What is the seed? What initially got you interested in wanting to explore medicine? For you, potentially, that's your surgery you had. And then what watered that seed? And what watered that seed, again, for you is working at this free clinic, helping the underserved patient population. The reflections that you take from that, the kind of takeaways, you say what happened, right? Here's the story, what happened, and then you personalize it to you and say, well, this made me want to be a physician because, right? I think that's where you separate from I'm loving helping the underserved community to this experience really kind of solidified why I want to be a doctor because, and you don't in that reflection have to specifically focus on the underserved Hispanic population.
Okay. Right, that makes sense. Um, okay, and so like one of my when I was writing my personal statement, one of the stories that I was writing is that I was with a patient who didn't speak English,
Mm.
and when the physician left the examination room, the patient like I was ready to like excuse myself, but then the patient stopped me and she started telling me things that she didn't want, like that she didn't feel comfortable telling with the physician. Of course, I then told the physician everything, and the physician addressed her questions,
Yeah.
and everything was good. But then, kind of my reflection from that story was that I wanted to be, um, like as a physician, I would be a representation of her and all of the other Hispanics, and that I felt that um, that by being, representing her, by
Hmm.
representing her as a physician, I would be able to make a bigger impact.
Hmm.
So is that, would that fit into the why I want to be a physician, or what or into the what I
Yeah.
want to do as a physician?
Yeah, no, that fits into why you want to be a physician, because you want
Mhm.
to represent, right? In your words, you want to be a physician who looks like, talks like, etc. Your patients, and that's definitely an important thing. And again, how to kind of separate from just focusing on one community is the understanding of what patients feel like when they don't feel like they're being represented, when they don't feel like, from a cultural standpoint, the physician's understanding, whatever that may be. You having that understanding will help all of your patients, not just the ones that you specifically represent because of your culture, your heritage, where you're from, etc. Right?
Okay.
You can understand what it's like for a Mandarin Chinese speaking patient, what it's like for them to not be able to communicate in their native tongue to a white physician who doesn't speak Mandarin, right? You understanding that, right? Just because you don't speak Mandarin yourself, you have the empathy to understand what it's like to be a patient who can't communicate well with a physician, even through an interpreter. And so, just because you have that empathy, that's going to help you help all of your patients in the future who aren't white and English speaking patients,
Mhm.
right? And so,
Okay.
again, you don't have to specifically focus on, I represent this one narrow kind of culture and race, ethnicity, etc. But me being part of a minority, right? Being part of an underrepresented community will help me help everyone because I have that understanding, that empathy.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a totally like new point of view that I hadn't thought about. That's really good. Okay. And can I ask you just
Yeah, let's go.
another question, kind
Yeah.
of related to that, but not the same. Um, so basically, again, when I was writing my personal statement, I received feedback saying that pretty much I wasn't clear why I would choose to be a physician over, let's say, being a PA or a nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
And so,
Let me stop you there. I hate when people bring that up, right? Being a PA, being an MP, being a physician, they're all very, 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 very,
yeah.
very similar. And
Mhm.
unless in your personal statement you're going to waste space saying, I want to be a physician and not a PA because I want to be a physician and not an MP because, right? I don't think you need to waste space doing that, because
Okay.
the stories that you tell are going to be you interacting with patients and you reflecting on why that makes you want to be a physician. This makes me want to be a physician because, right? This strengthened my desire to be a physician because, right? Of course, you can, as a PA, as an NP, going through those routes, down those routes, you can do a lot of similar things. And
Mhm.
I think it's people who don't have enough experience with reading personal statements, understanding that there's a lot of similarity that are going to give you that feedback to go, well, I can't tell why you want to be a physician versus an NP or PA. I would ignore that if you are doing a good job telling your story and reflecting and really focusing on, right, this made me want to be a physician because I don't think anyone needs to waste space in a personal statement explaining the differences between MD, PA, NP, etc. I think if it comes up in an interview, that's your opportunity to discuss further and discuss the nuances and why specifically physician. In a personal statement, I don't think you need to go there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And if it does come up in an interview, um, I was thinking of because I did shadow PAs and I did shadow physicians,
Yeah.
and I decided towards going into medical school because I thought that the physician had a broader scope of practice, and I saw that their patient population was more complex. Um, like, do you personally think that those are valid reasons for wanting to become a physician as opposed to any of the other professions?
It doesn't really matter what I consider valid. I think you need to speak to your truth and what you saw as differences and what you kind of internalized as why one thing versus another.
Okay.
But
Very
it's
great.
great. Most students don't go out and shadow PAs, so it's good that you have that experience to be able to say, well, I've shadowed PAs, and here's why I don't want to be a PA, or I've shadowed PAs, kind of switching that just a little bit. I've shadowed PAs, and here's why I want to be a physician.
Okay. And would it be worth it including that experience of shadowing a PA in my extracurricular activities?
I think potentially I wouldn't list it as a separate shadowing thing. I think potentially for shadowing, you can definitely kind of list all the physicians that you've shadowed if you have more than one. I think you can mention in there that you've shadowed a PA and include those hours. I wouldn't put them separately though.
Okay. Right. And can I ask one last question?
Yeah, one more. Here we go.
Yeah, and it's kind of related to shadowing. I know you've said in the past that shadowing is a very passive experience. I'm just observing what the provider does,
Yeah.
and I did have um like a pretty cool experience shadowing at a hospital,
Mhm.
and um it was a code blue, and I was talking about that experience in my personal statement.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, I guess that's my question. Do you think shadowing experience is good enough to include in a personal statement?
I typically don't like shadowing experiences in your personal statement for that specific reason, right? It's a passive experience. And usually when students have a shadowing experience in the personal statement, the story is basically I saw this, I saw that, I saw this, I saw that. And it made me want to be a physician because, right? What's the difference between that and I watched on TV a story, right? I watched on TV this other story, and it made me want to be a physician because. So I think
Right.
shadowing experiences are one of the weaker experiences that you can tell, the stories that you can tell in your personal statement because it's passive and because all you're doing is observing everything that's happening. It's not as kind of an emotional connecting experience for you to go, I impacted this person's life, I interacted with them, just having that conversation, etc. That is impactful.
Right. Something to edit in my personal statement.
Chop it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some students will fight back and say, this was really impactful for me, and I go, great, that's your story, tell it. But that's just one man's point of view.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Those are all my questions. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Good luck to you.